A hair color that deserves a lot more love in fairy tales is red hair, especially since the color red is very significant in lots of fairy tales. Luckily, I found a really cute and funny Italian fairy tale called The Apple Girl, and it's not explicitly stated that she's a redhead, but I think it's implied.
Fucked up fairy tales with Liz.
Ding! So we open on a couple with a very common fairy tale quandary. They desperately want a child and have not yet had one. Over and over, the queen asks the heavens, "Why have I not borne a child in the way that any apple tree bears apples?" This is kind of a weird way to express that desire, and unfortunately the heavens took her literally. 9 months later, she gave birth to an apple. I personally can't even deal with the idea of a human coming out of my nether regions, and now I gotta deal with a fruit rolling out of there? Now, it was the hottest apple anyone had ever seen. It was this really rich red color, it didn't have a bruise on it, it had a really amazing, I don't know, stem, I guess? The couple did their due diligence in taking care of their gorgeous apple child, placing it on a solid gold tray on the balcony for all to enjoy. Now, it so happened that a different young king lived right next door. I assume the boundary between their kingdoms went like right down the middle of their houses or something. One day, this bachelor king was chilling on his own balcony, and he looked over and he saw this gorgeous rosy redhead combing her hair and bathing on the balcony across from him. He immediately fell in love with her, but when she saw him gawking, she ran to the gold tray and she dove into the apple. So the young king knocked on the neighbor's door. "Lady, you gotta give me that apple that's up on your balcony." "How dare you? That apple is my child!" In any other situation, I would ask, "What the fuck are you talking about?" if I didn't just see a woman jump out of that apple with my own eyes. "Please, I beg you, give me your apple child." Well, I guess for diplomacy's sake, I have to give it to you. It kind of surprises me that she gave the apple up so easily, but I also can't blame her for not bonding with a literal piece of fruit. So the young king brought the apple to his own home, and he had it set up in a chamber with brushes and combs and water and everything you could want for a fantastic spa experience. And each morning, the king would stare googly-eyed as this rosy, beautiful woman would climb out of the apple, would do her hair, would wash her face, and then climb back in at the end of the day. And this is all that happened. They didn't speak to each other, they didn't interact. She just ran a get ready with me while he stared. She was the first influencer! Now, the king was called off to war, so he had his servant guard over the apple girl in her chamber on penalty of his life. See, the young king had this kind of shitty stepmother, and she was really suspicious of all the time he had been spending in this chamber. And she was really wily. She drugged the servant and she stole his keys to get in there and see what the fuck was happening. She was absolutely flummoxed when all she could find in the fancy bathroom was this really amazing apple. Still, she took out a dagger from her sash and she went psycho on the apple, stabbing it all over. Then she screamed because blood oozed from every gash. She was so freaked out, she fled and she never returned. When the servant awoke, he found the chamber bloody and the apple shredded. Thankfully, his aunt was a fairy, and he brought the apple to her, and she had an idea. She combined 2 potions she had, one for bewitched apples, and one for enchanted maidens. When she poured this magical cocktail over the apple, the fruit burst, and the rosy young maiden came out from inside of it, covered in bandages and a little worse for wear. The fairy and the servant nursed her back to health while the king was away, and luckily her enchantment was broken, so now she could speak. "I'm 18 years old, and I was cursed to live in that apple." So the lady next door gave birth to you, and then 18 years later you were cursed into the apple? Actually, I'm not sure. What do you mean you're not sure? As far as I'm aware, I'm a full-grown woman who was living in an apple that magically appeared in some lady's womb. And then your stepmother brutally stabbed me. Let's get married! Yes, let's do this! We should probably start couples counseling immediately, though, right? Oh yes, the trauma, it is real. The end.
Fucked up fairy tales with Liz. Fucked up fairy tales with Liz.